Good morning and welcome to Saying Goodbye, a podcast by Angel. This is episode 3, and we're going to be just continuing the process of what my life was growing up and like where I was at and where I let off in episode 2. And I was doing what I was doing when I recorded the first episode. I listened to the first episode and I recorded the second one, and now I listened to the second one, and now I'm here recording the third. Man, that last part really got me. I remember, transitioning after that day, like feeling all those feelings, and there was a volcano inside of me. I remember that feeling also well when I was just reaching 7th grade, and it was like a new beginning, and there was a new monster that I found inside of myself. And I think at that point I wanted to inflict the pain, and I didn't want to be receiving the pain. And that's where the real treachery of my spirit began, where I wanted to hurt people to the point of where I felt my pain. As a mature adult that continues to grow every day, it's kind of hard to talk about myself in that way. But I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about a past self. I'm talking about what I felt, and thankfully I could attach how I feel to where I was at in that moment. I could sort of like engulf myself in that precise moment and then start to work my way out. I remember arguing with, like, I just had a big mouth, and I wanted to fight with the air if I could. And I remember finally getting into an argument with a dude, and he was looking to like pick on the smaller guys, and I was a freshman in junior high school, and this dude was probably a sophomore in high school, and he was, like talking shit, and I was mouthing off back, and I wound up getting into a fist fight with him, and he was with a bunch of older dudes, and I was with younger guys, and we know how that shit goes. And I remember that day we started fist fighting. He offered me to fight, and I obliged, and I got into a fist fight with him, and I wind up whipping his ass. And it was like a big thing back then, right? Like, yo, you win a fight, you beat up a kid in high school. Oh yeah, it's like the greatest thing in the world. And at that point, yeah, it was like a great accomplishment for me not to be the one getting the beating. And I never thought about what that ass whipping was for him when he had to go to high school and, be met with the brutality of what his friends were saying for getting beat up by a young kid. And I don't give a shit. We was just doing what boys do, and just growing up in the neighborhood is just it was a rite of passage for a long time. And these are different times, and at that time it was you had to do what you had to do. And around this time, Anthony was already, like, he wasn't doing any chores in the house. That's where a lot of the fights came from. He didn't, since he wasn't doing his chores, I would have to pick up his chores as well. You know, and that was the part, you know, it just used to get me pissed off. I was like, because I could clean or because I listened a little bit, you know, it's like, yeah, so since you could listen a little bit, then, you know, you are going to do the chores as well. A lot of times I wouldn't say anything because I didn't want him to beat my ass. So eventually, by the time I was 13, about to hit 14, like in between that time, Anthony wound up running away from home. He wound up running away from my uncle's house, and I wind up running away like 2 weeks later, or like a week later. I wind up leaving because as much as he used to whip my ass and he used to like violate me, you know, like he was my brother and I always wanted to be with him. You know, he was my bigger brother, he was my older brother, and he would, you know, even if it was like there's pain there, it didn't matter because that was the pain that I knew, and I preferred the pain that I knew rather than the pain I didn't know. And you know, I didn't know what it was gonna be like with him not around. I didn't know what it was gonna be like with just me in the house being the oldest one, or, you know, chores were gonna double. I was gonna get all the smoke, and I was just scared of that. I didn't want to be alone. Even though when I was around him, he didn't want me around, and I was alone anyway. But still, he was there, and he was familiar, and I wanted that familiarity, a painful familiarity. He would give it to me the way that my aunt would give it to me, my uncle would give it to me, and it would make me really feel real small, and we would argue a lot and fight a lot, and you know, I don't feel like, I don't feel bad for him, and I didn't deserve none of that shit from nobody. Not from my uncle, not from my aunt, not from my mother, not from my father that never came around to look for me, even though he lived in New York. And I endured a lot of shit. I didn't deserve none of that shit, man. But as a mature man, like right now in the place where I'm at as a father, and just going through a lot in life, I could have empathized, even though I didn't deserve none of that shit. And it messes me up because I seen what, like firsthand, like what this pain and what these drugs and what generational curses have done to my family. What they did to my mother, what they did to my uncle, what they've done to my aunts and my other uncles. And I have a deep sense of empathy. My heart is huge. And even though they did foul things, I understand that, excuse me, I understand the way that they felt, and because they didn't want to deal with that pain, they wanted to like inflict it on someone else, because that's exactly what I did. And it's not fun because you don't heal. You know, a part of me is healing, like as I speak to you guys. So Anthony ran away, and I ran away behind him. I stood in a friend's house. My friend Jonathan and George, we went to their crib, and they lived on 113th Street, man. And I remember we used to like cut school. We thought we was like the hottest shit on the block. And man, I still love them dudes, man. Like I'm friends with them to this day. We still be getting together. And you know, them guys looked out for us. They allowed us. I think they set like blankets up on the floor and shit. And there was a lot of them. There was like 4 of them, and they moms and they pops. So I think it was 6 of them. And then they let us too stay there. And I'm forever grateful to their parents, to them. You know, I always remember that, man, in my heart. Like, damn, man, they, you know, like, they really looked out, man. I appreciate them. I love you guys, man. And I wind up staying there. You know, my brother Anthony threw a fit. He was so angry that I ran away from home, and then I'm following him, and why I'm always up his ass and all these things. And I guess like a lot of my life, like most of my life, I always wanted to be a part of, and a lot of people didn't want me to be a part of. You know, I got rejected, and just being the youngest, man, sucks sometimes. Because you know, like, there was nobody I could really talk to. You know, there was nobody that I could say like, yo, man, I'm going through this shit. Like, you know, these are the things, and that shit wasn't allowed back then, man. It wasn't allowed that you could talk about your feelings, and that shit carries through till now because, like, today in society, it's not a right for people to like talk about deep things, about what they're feeling and how they're falling apart and how they need help and how they just want love. It's like, that's not accepted in society at this point. And by being vulnerable, I want to make it all right. I want to help somebody else be vulnerable and help somebody else tell their story. Because, man, no matter where I went, I didn't fit in. And that shit always made me want to be alone. Like, I was always around people, and I was always being the loud one and always trying to crack jokes and being the live one in the crew. But deep down inside, I was lonely, man. I was lonely in a crowd. I was lonely around my family. I was lonely in conversations. And it was, you know, in that loneliness, it made me real bitter. I was in a lot of pain, you know, and it just wasn't a good time. It wasn't a good time for me. My uncle wind up coming to the house while we were like throwing a hooky party and all this crazy shit. And we all ran and tried to get away, and we wind up getting away, and we wind up moving with my aunt, Titi Ali. And we wind up moving to I think it was Springfield Boulevard and Jamaica Avenue, all the way out there. We wound up moving all the way out there with my aunt Dolly, and she had her 2 kids, living with her. And then my cousin Ed, he was a little older. He was the oldest, and he wasn't really like staying there. He was already doing his own thing. and Titi Dali wound up taking us in, I think, for about a year. And at that time, I was beginning to be so far gone. Like, I was really like dark, and my mouth was at like the worst. And I would argue about everything. I'd be willing to fight, even though I knew I was gonna lose. I wouldn't care. I just wanted to be beat down, or I was really like on fire for like demolition. I wanted to do anything that would like demolish me completely, anything that would like obliterate my existence. I would start fights with like groups, and I wouldn't care. Like, it was just a whole bunch of shit. I got jumped a couple times in junior high school. Them kids was not fucking having it out there, man. In Hollis, Queens, it was, you know, I remember like talking shit like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go fight in school, and I got jumped a couple of times, and my cousin used to laugh at me. He was like, look, you talk all that fucking shit, and they be whipping your ass. And and even getting jumped, I was fighting back, and I was dealing with a lot of things, and it was just chaotic. I got so bad. I mean, things got so bad that at that point, I wound up going to see a psychiatrist. It wasn't a therapist. That shit was, I was seeing a psychiatrist. Like, I was losing my mind. I was just messed up. Like, the writing was all up on the wall. And I wound up going to a psychiatrist. They were like showing me pictures, like dark pictures, like, what do you see? What's this? What's that? And man, everything that I spoke about in therapy at that point was about hatred. I hate this, I hate that. Like, my heart was just so inflamed with hatred. Because at 14, I just really, like, that all happened in a year. Like, I ran away from my uncles, go to stay with my aunt, always arguing with her, my cousin Junie, with my cousin Ed. I didn't care. I was arguing with Anthony. I'm arguing with everybody in the house. I'm just arguing, and I'm just fighting, and I'm just bugging out, man. And it was, I was just so broken. I couldn't see like how I was gonna survive this part of my life. You know, like, I didn't want to survive it. You know, and I pushed the envelope a lot of times. And it was hard, man. It was a hard time. It was like one of the darkest moments of my life, in my young life. I remember I used to have a friend, Sean. He was the coolest dude, man, and I was just being messed up to him, and he just stopped coming around. And I still think about that right now, man. I always wish that I could get a hold of him and apologize and make amends. Because he was such a good dude, man. And I was just messed up. I wasn't good. I wasn't good. I know I wasn't good. I knew that there was something wrong with me. There was something inside of me that was just like broken. And it was a lot. It was from taking the beatings, from nobody just like listening to me. Nobody cared what the hell I said, and I was just so erratic, and I just wanted attention. I wanted to be heard, and I was just never heard. And that shit, it just left like a bitterness inside of me that I wanted to unleash it on the world, and I wanted the world to just take me out. I didn't want to be here anymore at a young age. And at this point, my mother, I think she got like 6 months clean. I think even 3 months clean. And there wasn't really like big requirements like there are now. And I think she got clean. And at that point, I would stay with Titi Dali was like for like a year, a little over, and then Titi Dali was moving to Florida. And then I don't know if we were like really given the opportunity to come, but I know they were leaving, and it was like, oh yeah, you guys gonna go with your mother, you're gonna stay here. And then it was like, no, you guys are going with your mother. She got clean, everything is good. But I think it was more like we agreed to that too, because I thought, like, oh, we're gonna go back with my mother and things are gonna be great. And it's a great illusion, but the truth is my mother wasn't gonna get better. Like a few months clean, I mean, hell no. But you know what? That wasn't my Aunt Dolly's problem. She had her own kids. She had her own life. And at least when we got with her, she was like, yeah, you need to see a therapist. And I wound up seeing a therapist. And it was like, that's when I started realizing that I was messed up. I recognized that in myself. By the age of 13, I realized that I wasn't like the other kids, and I was really different. There was my spirit was broken. I was just a broken kid, and my childhood was shattered, and it just, everything was just so painful. Waking up and going to school, nothing was good. Nothing felt good. Nothing felt like it meant anything. I just didn't have a purpose. And then I had a little bit of excitement. Like going back to my mother. And I'm like, oh, you have all these expectations. You have all these dreams of living a normal life, and you like, finally everything is gonna come back around. Like, life is finally gonna give me what I deserve, And we wind up moving from Queens Village. We wind up moving with my mother to Maspeth, Queens. And I was finishing off the 8th grade in junior high school. I think it was IS 71 or 77, something like that, out there in Maspeth. I used to walk like 25 minutes to school every day, and I think that really helped me with a lot of my anger, like just the walking back and forth. It was like a 25-minute walk every day because I couldn't afford the bus. I wasn't taking the bus. School wasn't really giving anything for like the bus. You had to pay like a portion of it, and money was not an option. And then I wind up being a freshman in Grover Cleveland. I wind up coming to Grover Cleveland, and I started seeing some of the guys that I knew from like Bushwick, because my aunt lived on DeKalb, and I ran into some guys that we familiar faces and stuff like that, like like my brother Mikey, SR, like. And then I became friends with a lot of the guys from there and from the block and from around, and guys that used to all flock to the block of DeKalb, like once I became a freshman in high school. And by the time I became a freshman in high school, and I started becoming like a young man at 14. my mother started doing drugs again. And everything started all over again. But now at this point, I'm 14. I understand what drugs are and what she's doing. And yeah, I was like, man, at this point I was older. I noticed what she was doing, going out. She was like, she had like this boyfriend. She would bring him around, or when he wasn't around, she was out doing some stuff. And it really got crazy in that household in Maspeth on 57th Street. It really got crazy. She would go out for a couple of days. At that point, I had some friends. I would go eat at their house because there was no food in the house. You know, like, I don't even know if she was paying rent or she was on a pro. I don't know. I just know that I was there and she'll be gone. And you know, I was in high school trying to make it through, and I was writing poetry about death. And there was a friend of mine, Elise. I used to like write the poetry and share it with her, and she was like, I don't know how the hell she didn't, like, she wasn't like fucking scared, like, this motherfucker's crazy. But she befriended me. She was like, you know, like, she used to tell me like, your poetry is really dark, but she didn't run away from it. And I don't know, you know, she was always, you know, a friend that I would always talk to. And I wound up meeting Roxanne around that time, and she was in my homeroom, and I made friendships with people that I still have in my life today, that I'm still friends with, you know, back from being a freshman in high school. And, you know, that poetry, I still have some of it, and I was reading it, and Jesus, it was dark. I was still like, I had no idea the madness and just the lack of love in my heart. And I'm meeting new friends, and I'm getting older, and by this time I start to smoke weed and shit, and now I'm really like, oh, this is what I've been searching for my whole life, is to numb myself. And weed became the best thing that ever happened to me, because I went back home. Like, I went back home after school one day, and my mother was gone. My mother left the house. And I had clothes, like I would have like my button-down shirts and my pants and all this stuff. Like, I had certain gear, and a lot of my clothes were gone. I don't know if my mother came with somebody and they stole my stuff, or I really don't know what happened. But I remember that like something happened that prompted my mother never coming back. One morning I was like, Anthony dropped out of school, and I was the only one going to school, and my mother came home after like a long few days of being high, and she was just angry and slamming things. And you know, I woke up and I'm like, oh, you know, like, why are you making all this noise? Probably had a little entitlement, but I'm just tired because I go to school every day, 5 days a week. I'm going to school, and I'm just tired of Saturday. I just want to sleep in a little bit. And I was like, oh, why are you making all this noise? You know, like, I go to school, and I'm the only one that does anything in this house. Like, I'm paying bills and shit, but, you know, I got a warped sense of reality. And I was like, I'm the only one doing anything here. Like, nobody does nothing in this house. I'm the only one. And my mother was like, who the fuck are you, motherfucker? And she ripped out the trap to the sink in the kitchen, and that shit used to be, you know, like now we got PVC, but back then that shit was like metal. It was like galvanized, a galvanized pipe. It was a pipe, and she ripped that shit out, and she came and she tried to hit me. All right, I'm remembering. All right. So I flipped out and I said some shit to my mother. I flipped out and said some shit to my mother, and she grabbed a knife, and I was sleeping. I was like laying on the pillow, and she came with the knife, and she said, "Who the fuck you talking to, motherfucker?" And she starts trying to like poke me while I'm laying in the bed. And let me see, I don't know if it's there or here, but in one of my arms, I think it's this one. I think it's right. Is it right there, or yeah, it's this side. Yep, it's that side. She was trying to stab me, and I put my arm up, and she stabbed me right there, and she caught me right on the bone, and the knife went in my arm, and it like bent, and then it just flicked, and it cut me, and I was bleeding, and I'm like, oh shit, this fucking. And at that point, I'm calling her a bitch. You know, like I'm just excited from all the craziness that's going on, and she's like, bitch, motherfucker. Now she's in a rage. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm in my underwears. You know, like, she fucking stabbed me. I'm like, what the fuck? I get up. And she had, like, it was a railroad apartment, so the back, I was still like in that middle room, and I think she had the back room, or I don't know how it was set up, her and Anthony. I know I was like sleeping in that middle room, and for whatever reason, I couldn't go out through there, and I was trying to go out to get out through the front door, and she ripped out the pipe. And when she ripped out the pipe, she started like trying to hit me. I'm losing blood. I'm like, oh shit. And I start getting dizzy. And at that point, I'm like, oh shit, if I pass out, she's gonna fucking beat my head in. I'm gonna die here. And she tried to hit me. I ducked, and she like fucking ripped the junk out the wall. I remember on the door, she like hit it so hard. And I hit my mother. I punched her. I'm not sure if I punched her or I pushed her, but I had to get out the house, and I don't know if I hit her or I pushed her. I know I knocked her down, and I ran out the house, and I was in my underwear, and I ran out the house, and I ran like through the tracks, and I ran to my friend Chepo's house, and he's like, yo, what the fuck? I had blood all over my arm, on my body. He thought I was like stabbed up. And like he helped me get like a shirt and some shorts or some shit, and I was just like, I was messed up. My arm was messed up, and I think that like after that, cause I can't recall like, you know, exactly, but like after that, she was gone. She must have thought I was like gonna call the cops or some shit, and she thought probably she was gonna get in trouble. But yeah, man, my shit was busted open, and I think that like after that happened, she was gone. I wind up like not going to school because I didn't want the school to say like, hey, what's going on with this? You know, like, what happened in your arm? Why is your arm swollen like that? Why you got that stab in your arm? Like, you need to go to the hospital. I was like, yo, I'm going to wind up going back to foster care. You know, I'm going to wind up back in the system. And, you know, I didn't want that shit, man. I was not going back. I was not going back to foster care, man. I didn't want that shit. I was older. I know kids don't get adopted. I'm like, fuck this shit. And You know, I remember trying to get my Uncle Landy to come up to school for me because I missed like 2 weeks of school. And yeah, my Uncle Landy was like, hell no. Like, nah, nigga, you ain't coming. You know, like, I'm not going up to school for you. Like, what the fuck am I gonna go up for you for? I'm like, deal, you know, like, I need somebody to go because I missed 2 weeks and I need to, you know, get back in. And I had gotten my arm messed up and I wound up not going to school. And my uncle wasn't having none of that shit. He was like, well, you ran away from my house. And, you know, like, you got what you wanted and you wanted your mother. And now you back with your mother. And now you having all these problems. And I'm not dealing with that shit. And yeah, my uncle was like, basically, like, fuck you. Like, handle that shit on your own. I got nothing to do with that shit. You know, and I wind up not being able to go back to school because if I would have went back to school, they would have found out that my mother wasn't there and that I'm all alone, like, in the apartment. And, you know, I would have wound up getting sent back to foster care, and I would have been back in the system. And I didn't see it as a good thing. I didn't think that was a good thing. And now looking at it, it probably would have been better for me to get help and for me to change my life and get things together. But I thought of it like if it was prison. I didn't think of it as like a healthy thing. It wasn't, and there was no way, shape, or form that I was gonna believe that was a healthy option for me. And at that point, you know, I was staying in the apartment for as long as I could, for a few months. I had my boy Andy, like, my, you know, good dude that I've known for like forever, man. And he was having problems in his house, and he would come and he would stay with me. We were like trying to plaster the walls and do all these things, and fix up the apartment. And meanwhile, we're not even paying bills. We're just 14, 15-year-old kids at this point, like, not understanding how life works. You know, my life was complete turmoil. At this point, now, at 15, I had nobody. I had nobody that I had nobody there. You know, Anthony already had a girlfriend, and he was always busy being with her. You know, Marisol, God rest her soul, she's no longer with us. And, you know, a little while later, he wound up, you know, getting Marisol pregnant. And Marisol was a little older than he was. And, you know, he wound up having his own family and his own stuff. And, you know, like, I wasn't a part of that. You know, I had my own journey. Everybody went, like, my brother went his own direction, and I was 15 years old, like, with nothing. You know, and I wind up trying to, like, stay with a few friends. I wind up doing some what is it, exterminator work with this dude. And I would go with him to different places, and he had like this girl that he was like seeing. Her name was Tina. She was an Asian girl. And I wound up meeting Tina, and Tina had like a 2-bedroom apartment, and I never, you know, I was like cool with her. I smoked a little weed with her. And in my process of being homeless, I wind up asking Tina if I could go and I could stay with her. And man, Tina wound up being like a lifesaver. You know, because I was staying everywhere. I was staying, my man Mikey, that we say we family, you know, like my cousin Mikey, I was trying to stay over there, like in DeKalb, and I was trying to stay anywhere that I could stay, because I just didn't understand what was going on and that I didn't have a place to go. And now it's a different part. I'm not a child. Well, I am, but I wasn't. I was 15. And to stay anywhere, you gotta pay. I just didn't understand the concept of any of that shit. I didn't have any men in my life that would explain things like, yo, you can't live somewhere without paying. You know, I couldn't get a job. I couldn't do anything. I was out of school. Already at like 15. And luckily, by the grace of God, man, Tina, she didn't even know me. She took me in. And Tina held me down for like 2 years. Like 2 years. Even probably a little longer. I think it was like 2 years. Yeah, I think it was like 2 years. And I love you, Tina. And you don't know how much that help really meant for me. I wish I could have done better, you know, but I didn't. And I mean, how could I? When I was in the situation I was in, there was no healing, there was no understanding. You know, Tina was like, she would work and she paid all the bills and she took care of everything. And man, I just didn't understand the concept of working and paying a bill. I didn't understand none of that stuff. I didn't understand like being responsible for anything, because I was never responsible for anything. Not even myself. You know, and Tina was like my guardian angel, man. She fucking looked out for me big time. I owe her a lot. You know, I owe her so much, and hopefully one day, you know, I'll get to speak to her again and tell her how much she meant in my life. You know, she played a pivotal role in helping me to not be homeless. And I was, you know, like I was a violent, you know, like argumentative, disrespectful, mouthy, self-centered motherfucker. And that was what it was for me. You know, like living in the streets, foster care, going from house to house, never belonging anywhere. And then I wind up in this woman's house and she's letting in a Tasmanian devil. I was just like spinning and whirlwinds of shit, and life was just chaotic. It was, nothing was planned, no future, no thought of tomorrow. You know, like Tina was like, yo, get your GED. I would take GED classes. I would start things and never finish them. I never seen anything through. Definitely not at 15, 16, you know, like hell no. I was fucked up, and I couldn't really work because I had no work permit. And I would pick up work here and there and do little things, but man, that woman never charged me for anything, man. And it's like, how incredible is her heart. And I don't know if I'm not questioning why she did it or how she did it, or I know that she did it. And at that point I moved in with her in Willoughby, and then I introduced her to my brother, Booby, God rest his soul. And you know, like that's how their relationship started, and then that's how I was able to stay, because Booby came home on a furlough. He ain't met her. They got together, and you know, that's how I wound up being able to live, on the strength that Booby was a man, and she didn't just kick my ass out to the street because I probably deserved it. And just, I needed to be raised. I just wasn't raised. I didn't understand anything about life. You know, how could I? You know, I was just disagreeable about everything. I couldn't be like in disagreement and not be disagreeable. I wanted to be, if we got a disagreement, I'm disagreeable. And I'm fighting and I'm arguing and I'm being the biggest prick that I could be, because I had to inflict pain. That was my purpose at that age. And a lot of us were like that at that age. And you know, today in my process, I'm finding grace in the process. And I had a reading today, and it said, like, what grace is. Grace teaches us to let things unfold naturally and let go of the illusion of control. And you know, I'm finding grace in the process today. I'm finding grace within myself and just allowing things to unfold here as I share my story, and you know, letting go of anything, any idea that I have control. It's not me, it's God. God leads me every day. I thank God every day that I wake up, and I have no control over anything. So as we come to a conclusion, I hope that anybody that is continuing to listen as I share with my friends and as I continue in this process and share with people I care about that mean something to me, and as we continue in the process to get it prepped for like YouTube and everything. I had a friend, she said something to me, and it really, like, it hit me hard in my heart, and it just really it hurt, and it felt good to understand it. So she said to me, you were groomed to be grateful for the breadcrumbs of love you received. I was grateful for breadcrumbs of love. I never really got like, you know, like just love. And I got it here and there from like people, you know, like growing up, people like Tina showed me love, you know, like that. She could have just been done with me, but I'm even realizing like in my life, I got breadcrumbs, you know, and I was grateful for the little bit. And, you know, I could only speak as a man. That's how I feel today. Like I get breadcrumbs. And I'm tired of getting breadcrumbs. So I'm learning to love myself. I'm learning to pour into myself. I'm learning, instead of giving everything out and pouring from an empty cup, I'm just filling myself with God's love and with obedience and understanding and clarity and grace and understanding where I'm at in this process and just loving myself for being me. And I just want to thank everybody for listening, anybody that's listening, anybody that's doing life alone, I love you. And you don't have to do it alone anymore. You don't. I'll do it with you. Help me to help you to help me. You know, like that's what I'm here for. I'm here to give of myself. I'm here to pour myself out and let you see everything. And hopefully that'll help you find your way home to God, to yourself, to a better life, to a better family life. But it all starts with us being healthy within ourselves and finding all the answers and working on ourselves and going and grieving the old us and letting that go and changing and being better just day by day. It's nothing. I'm a forever project. I will be working on myself forever until, the day comes that I transition. And, I am appreciative for the process. And I look forward to talking with you guys on the next one. We're going to be recording every week. I spoke to a couple of people and we're going to get the process rolling. And I'm getting some help, and getting some positive feedback. And I know this is going to be special. Thank you guys for listening. And I'll see you on the next one.